So what you might be noticing is I am in a totally different setting than normal, and that is because I'm filming in my basement. And fun fact about my basement, I just realized there are 2 black cats living down here, and they started meowing, and I'm trying to be friends with them, so I left some tuna out. But if I seem really scared out of nowhere, it's because a cat might, you know, jump on me or something. So I don't know what's gonna happen. Anyways, welcome to another episode of Behind the Edit. I'm so excited to be back. It's been a few weeks since I've uploaded one of these videos. I had a little rough time after the Instagram mishap where I uploaded a photo, got reported, and it totally freaked up my engagement. It's all messed up, and it made me just kind of feel a little bad about, you know, myself, and felt like I took like a huge step backwards, but that's not even the case. It's just my ego being a mess, I guess. And also, I want you guys to know, I read your comments. I know you want full-on tutorials. Trust me, like, they're coming. Like, I'll get to them when I can, but I have a few more of these classic behind the edit styled videos where I just walk you through and break down this edit with you in Photoshop, showing you my Photoshop file. And I'm glad I'm not doing a live edit for this next one because it is a mess. We're taking this photo of Carly Bell to this photo, all in Lightroom and Photoshop. We actually shot this photo in Lowe's. I believe it was no, actually it was Home Depot, and the employees there didn't even mind. They like just thought it was funny. They're like, oh, like that looks so fun, like you look so pretty. To me, of course not Carly. They were talking about my outfit. Okay, side note, guys, I do see there's a cat looking at me right now. Hi. Also, my mouse decided to just die on me in the middle of the video, so you know what? Let's just hop into Photoshop. Please follow me at Miles of Color on Instagram, as well as Carly Bell, and let's just hop into this gnarly edit. It's going to be quite the ride. I'm gonna start us off here with the before image in Lightroom. As you can see, not the best lighting. I shot this photo too warm. I'm really not a great photographer. I'm definitely an editor over everything, so I'll just make sure that I get what I need in the location, and that I'm like, I have fun editing, so I just wanna go home and have fun with the edit when I get there, and I get as much as I need at the actual photo shoot as I can get. So let's hop over to the more edited version. Here we go. Okay, so something I always need to do is a crop. I always crop my images to 4:5/8:10. That's because that's the largest format that you can actually post on Instagram, you know, not a 1:1 or something like that. I like to basically section my models into thirds, so stomach, chest, and then head with some head space. That's the crop. To start out here, I just like to use Lightroom and Camera Raw to boost up the initial photo and just get more color and more light. So we started here by boosting our highlights, boosting our shadows, and we also boosted up our vibrance here, and then dropped our clarity just a little bit. Dropping the clarity is going to make the image a little more soft overall. Then check out my tone curve. Like I said, we are purely here just to boost our exposure, so there you go. Next, I always go down to the bottom of the menu in Lightroom, and I like to mess with my calibration. This is super fun. You can get some really cool colors out of here. It's like my main source of finding the colors that I want with a photo. So let me bring this on, and you can see it's just more saturated. We have some deeper blues. We changed our greens a little bit. Let's scroll up here. I want a little bit more attention brought to Carly, so I'm going to add a little bit of a vignette here, and just adding that tiny bit of vignetting eliminates the distractions around the photo because it's so bright and colorful already that I need focus brought to Carly because she's wearing such a minimal outfit already. And next is the HSL and color. Boom. Okay, so you can see I messed with my yellows a little bit here to make them a bit more appealing, less yellow and more, if I can scroll around here, it's a more pink. My greens, I didn't want them so green and so yellow, so I brought them over to the right a little bit, around 30, to make them more teal. Little micro adjustments to my reds to make them more orange, my blues a little more blue instead of teal, and then just some saturation here. I brought my skin tones down a little bit, brought my yellows down a little bit, and then boosted up my greens, aquas, and blues because those are the colors that I want to stand out the most in this image. Next, we're going to right click and go to edit in Photoshop. Okay, so here's our image in Photoshop. There's two things that we're going to add into this image. One, I want to add some face paint onto Carly, and then two, I also want to edit out the hair over here on the left side of her face. So I need a sample of her ear from a different photo to add into this one. This is a really fun little trick. I'm going to show you how I did it. I really enjoyed her ear in this photo right here, so I'm going to right click, edit in Photoshop. Once this bad boy opens in Photoshop, I'm going to make a selection of her ear. Let's make a little Command J of the background, which is going to be a duplicate. I am going to press J again. Actually, I'm going to press L for the lasso tool. I'm going to draw around her ear right here, and I'm going to click this layer mask button. Boom, muting the bottom background layer, and this is what I got. This is all I'm going to need just because I want the top of her ear to be duplicated, not the bottom, because I want the top of her ear to be brought over to the next image, not necessarily the bottom, so I don't really care about a clean selection there. And you can see this is like the final ear selection that I got. I just painted out the bottom of her ear a little bit, and here we are. Boom, check that out. See, so I already added her ear in here, and next we're going to move on to the first step of our process in Photoshop, which is frequency separation or local dodging and burning, which is what I do now, which I don't recommend because it will take up your entire life. So once I added in Carly's phantom ear, I did a little stamp layer by clicking Command Alt Shift and E, and that is going to combine all the layers you made so far and make them into one layer at the top of your project. So let us bring that in and let's check out our frequency separation, which is going to be a pretty huge transition here. Boom. Okay, so totally different, right? Like, we did a lot of touch up here. I know some people will think this is very heavy-handed, but this is just my style. My frequency separation is very different from other people's because I actually do my dodging and burning on a high pass layer above my texture layer. So let's zoom in here real quick. This is what we have with just the frequency separation. And then let me add my high pass on here, which is at about 40% opacity, and boom. So I'm only dodging her face and her body here. That's all I'm really using it for. And let me just like bring it in and out. There it is. I want to do a tutorial specifically on the way I do frequency separation. So if you'd like to see that, leave me a comment down below. Let me know you would like to see the frequency separation tutorial. Next is adding blush. So I did a soft light layer at about 8%. Grabbed her lipstick color actually by clicking I and then grabbing her lipstick right here, and then I just made a brush by clicking B, and I had my flow at 1% and I had my hardness at 0%, and this is what happened. It's very light. I just literally added blush to her skin right here just to add a little bit more makeup since we didn't have like a full-on makeup artist there with us. I just wanted to do a little bit more in post. And so the next stage is a little controversial. I did liquefy on her arms. That's because I feel like I was a little close to her, and I feel like if I wasn't so close to her, her arms wouldn't appear so wide out, but because I was shooting kind of close to Carly, she had a little bit of lens distortion. So I didn't correct that in Lightroom, so I tried to do it with liquefy, and I just brought it down just a little bit just to give her a more like dainty kind of look. Because she's a very small person, I think I just photographed her poorly in that regard, but I think this is an amazing photo so far. So that's what I did there. Next, I wanted to add a little bit of magic into this photo. I used to add like a ton of sparkles into all of my photos, and this time I just wanted to try that out as well. So I literally just Googled dust specks overlay, and this is what I found, and this is what I used. So I just blended this layer here. Check it out. It's literally just darkness, right? Darkness and some specks. I did some motion blur on it going straight down. Then I added a levels layer right here, and I just kind of like messed with it a little bit to where the black was true black. And then let's blend this one more time to screen, and there you go. So check this out. This is really cool. This just adds some fantasy and movement to the photo. So let me bring it in, bring it out. It's just a super nice subtle thing. So yeah, like I said, just Google dust specks, bring that bad boy into your PSD file, line it up however you want, and then blend it using screen mode, and then just mess around with levels, try some blurring and other effects, and it's super fun to add little dust specks to your photos. Next is our first round of exposure and coloring, and I apologize, like after this point in the photo, we're just going so hard on making micro adjustments that it gets really confusing to kind of see what's happening. So here is our exposure and coloring. I didn't do a ton here, so I used selective coloring, vibrance, curves, exposure, another curves layer, and color lookup. So for the first selective color here, I think I just changed my greens a little bit. There's the settings I did, and I just want them to be a bit more blue. For my vibrance, I wanted the color to pop a little bit more, so I just boosted it by 14-15. Next, I felt like her face was very in shadow compared to a lot of the image, so I made a curves layer I added a little bit here in the bottom section. I just boosted it up and used a layer mask here where I just painted over her face, and check this out. Boom, it just gave her a little bit more exposure on her face, which I think really just brought her face out and brought more attention to her face, which is the point of the photo. For exposure, I just wanted to bring in a little bit more exposure. I brought to 0.14, then I also brought my gamma correction up a little bit, which gamma correction is super cool. I highly recommend messing with it because it can add a little bit of contrast to your photo. Next is the curves tool. This is the exact same curve adjustment I did inside of Lightroom, and this is basically just going to be adding overall brightness to the photo by adding a little bit to the highlights and a little bit to the shadows here. And then last but not least, in this first exposure and coloring layer, is the 2-strip blending at color and opacity 14. I do this to almost all of my photos. It gives you a nice like pink kind of skin tone, and it also adds some cyan tones to your greens, your blues, and your aquas. Okay, next, this layer is a doozy, man. Okay, so I like to use Camera Raw to do the final adjustments for my photos, and that just kind of gives them an overall punchy look. So hopping onto this next layer, let's check it out. Boom, there it is. A lot is going on here. Like, it looks like it's Instagram ready almost. Like, look how much pop we got going on. So let's open up Camera Raw and see what's going on here. And if you ever want to use Camera Raw for your photos, you just make a new layer here. You can do that whole stamp thing, like I said, Command, Option, Shift, and E, and then create a little convert to smart layers up here, and then open it up with Camera Raw. If you're not familiar with Camera Raw, it's essentially Lightroom built into Photoshop. So what I wanted to change here is basically just make this image incredibly punchy. So I added contrast, I added some highlights and some shadows, just a little bit. I added some whites, I added some blacks. I brought my clarity down a little bit to have some softness around her skin. I boosted my dehaze just a little bit, and that's going to add some contrast to the entire photo, and it's going to make colors a little deep, but it's very powerful, so I'd be very careful with it. And then vibrance, I brought it up 20 to 25. We did the exact same adjustments here in our curves. We just added highlights, lights, darks, and shadows, and basically just made it like a nice little like rounded off curve. For HSL, I literally have been doing the same thing the whole time. I brought my skin tones down a little bit. I boosted my aquas and my blues. I brought my greens over to the right. I brought my aquas and blues over to the right as well in my hue section. And I was doing all that because I wanted more of a cyan vibe. So if you pull your blues and your aquas to the right, you get a more cyan, like teal vibe. Instead, if you pull it to the left, you get a more purple and blue vibe. And then last but not least, in this crazy Camera Raw section, I just messed with my primaries once more in the calibration section. I made my reds a little bit more orange. I made my greens a little bit more aqua, and then I made my blues a little more teal, and I saturated them just a little bit more. Okay, next I have this dodge and burn layer. So I created this layer, which is just a gray layer, and then I blended it using hard light at opacity 55. And I just used my dodging and burn tools here. I use my dodge at 7% exposure, my range on highlights, and my burn, I use it on shadows and exposure around 2. And this is what I did. I basically just made her whites of her eyes lighter. I evened out the shadows on her chin, and then I made her eyebrows a little darker here. Okay, next is this really cool layer I found on Google. I literally just Googled gold paint. Please don't ask me for this image. Please find your own images because it is not mine. I'm not selling this photo. I just found it. I don't even know whose it was. It literally was like gold paint splatters. Here's the original image, and I just made a selection of the entire paint using my wand tool here, just kind of going like this. And then I clicked my layer mask down here, and this is what I got. So I brought it over by clicking and dragging over to this file here, and I dropped it in, and this is what I got. So I laid it over Carly's eyes here, and I painted it out of her eyes, and I painted it out of like unwanted areas just to make it look like we had someone like have like brush strokes over her face. And that's because we're in the paint aisle at freaking Home Depot, so like why not add some paint onto her face, you know? It's really cool. And then I did this clipping layer right here, and I just changed, literally these are my adjustments right here, -20 for my hue, and then I just hella saturated up to 65 here just to really boost my saturation. And I'm really happy with how that turned out. Last but not least, I wanted to add some overall noise to the image, just to add texture to the entire image, just to make it look a little bit more believable. If you add grain or noise to an image or a high pass filter or something like that, when you're compositing, it can make it all look like it kind of blends together a little bit by having this cohesive texture that is combined over the entire image. So I just added a little bit of noise on a gray layer here. It looks like it's at 5% on Gaussian, and that is literally it. That is everything I did to this photo. It was such a long journey. This photo took me a really freaking long time just because it had so much experimenting and so many new things that I was learning. I just learned local dodging and burning, so I did a little bit to her face there on that dodge and burn layer that I was talking about, and it was just hard. I had to replace an entire ear and stuff, so that would be really hard to do right in front of you guys, but I hope you learned something here. I'm a little rusty with these behind the edit videos, but I'm very excited to be back. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to film another one of these right now, but please don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Miles of Color, as well as Carly Bell. Okay, love you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.